Howdy readers and howdy film buffs. I'm Jason, this is Chapter and Verse, and this is the March movie entry in my Mortality project called You Carry a Coffin Today. I will link the announcement video for that project and list as well what we're going to be watching and reading for the rest of the year in the description box below. But tonight we're going to be discussing the film Behind the Sun by Walter Salles. Okay, Walter Salles is a Brazilian filmmaker. This movie came out in 2001. Walter Salles is most famous for directing the movies Central Station and The Motorcycle Diaries. Motorcycle Diaries was about Che Guevara. But this film is the only one of his that I've seen, and I've loved it for a very long time, and only just rewatched it this month for the first time in probably 15 years. Behind the Sun is based on a novel by Ismail Kadare, or Kader. I've never known quite how to pronounce that name. He is, I think, an Albanian writer. I read one of his books back when he won the Man Booker International Prize, when that prize still meant something. And I didn't like the book very much. That book was Spring Flowers, Spring Frost, I think. But Behind the Sun is based on a novel of his, I think, called Broken April. It is set in Brazil in 1910, and it is set primarily on the homestead of a very poor family in the middle of nowhere. Now, this family is in the midst of a multi-generations long blood feud with a neighboring wealthy family, a much, much wealthier family. And the blood feud is over a contested piece of land, okay? And it works like this. So the son of one family, at some point in the past, killed the son of the other family. And so what they did was they took the shirt of the slain boy or slain young man, and they hung it up on a clothesline. And once the blood had gone yellow, had changed from red to yellow in the sun, it was time for the next son in the family of that slain boy to kill his brother's killer. And so on and so forth. The family's going back and forth like that throughout generations. And from what I understand in the film, they only get one shot, right? So if a boy is shot and he survives, then he has survived, right? And it moves to the next child in the line. So the movie begins with the oldest son in this very poor family, who are sugarcane farmers, getting shot and killed. And then the middle brother, who's the main character in this movie, is essentially waiting for the call from his father to then take up the rifle and go kill the killer of his brother, which he does. And so the bulk of the film then is this main character, is this middle son in this poor family, waiting for himself to be killed. Okay, and it's just a cycle of violence, right? It's this kind of self-perpetuating wheel of bloodshed, and we see the circle, okay, as a symbol of punishment and torture in the film in many ways. So it's not just the cycle of violence that these families are caught up in, but it's the sun itself in the sky beating down on them constantly as they're working and just sweat and blood on their land. It's the mill itself that they use to grind the sugar cane. Father is just constantly beating these bulls, okay, to just go around and around and around, milling the sugar cane, just squeezing all of the juice out of it. And at one point late in the film, the youngest brother in that family notices that the bulls are doing it of their own accord. They've been so conditioned to just continue moving in this circle that they're doing it of their own accord. So early in the film, the narrator, who's the littlest boy, the youngest boy in this poor family, says in voiceover, "We live in stream of souls. It's in the middle of nothing. All we know is it's above the ground and below the sun." So this is our first clue to the meaning of the title of the film, Behind the Sun. it's about a new way of seeing, right? It's about subverting a paradigm that you didn't think you could escape somehow. It's not the either or of above the ground and below the sun. It's behind the sun. It's about removing oneself from a set of circumstances and looking at it in a new way, freeing oneself from it, being liberated from it. And so what we see in the movie is we see the symbol of the circle moving from this kind of sphere of punishment and torture and pain with the boiling sun in the sky and the movement of the sugarcane mill and the cycle of violence. So how does the main character then step outside this paradigm that he finds himself in? He does it by seeing circles come to mean something else. So the circle as a symbol moves from punishing the main character to liberating or redeeming even the main character. At one point, a circus passes their homestead and makes its way to the nearest village, and he gets it into his mind that he is going to run away in part, at least, right? Like, I mean, he feels like he can't necessarily leave or shirk what he regards as sort of preserving his family's honor in this blood feud, but he needs to get away for a few days, and so he takes up with the circus performers and heads off to the next village, even beyond that village, and falls in love with this girl in the circus, and she is a fire eater. So for the first time in his life, flames, right? The sun of the title ceases to be something that is beating him down and crushing his spirit, right? I mean, he's seeing her literally eating flames, juggling flames, and at one point she climbs this rope, right? For trapeze artists or something to train on. It's got a little handle up at the top for her to kind of hold on. And she sort of situates her body at the top of this rope, and she has him turn her and turn her and turn her. And she just keeps crying out faster, faster. And her body is really perpendicular with the rope. And he just is spinning her just constantly. And it's the most beautiful moment in the film. And in that moment, the image of the circle, the symbol of the circle, comes to represent something beautiful. For the first time in his life, the circle then comes to contain joy for the first time in his life, and for the first time he sees a way out with this girl, with this love, and what she has demonstrated to him. Along those same lines, right? This idea of kind of stepping outside the story that you are confined in to remake your world. His little brother. So when the circus performers are first coming through, they stop and ask the little brother for directions. And the little brother doesn't have a name, right? They ask him his name. He just says kid. That's what his parents call him, the kid. So they have this brief conversation, the circus performers and this little boy. And the girl, who the middle brother will go on to fall in love with later in the film, as I've said, asks him if he knows how to read, and he doesn't. But that doesn't stop her giving him a book. And even though he doesn't know how to read, there are pictures in the book. It's a book about mermaids in some way, shape, or form. And he makes his own story up. He invents his own story, which is precisely what his older brother, the middle brother, will do later in the movie. He will figure out a way to remake his story, to subvert this cruel paradigm that he has found himself in and be reborn, really. The theme of this kind of cyclical violence reminded me a lot of the scene, the conversation in Munich between the Palestinian and the Jewish man on the landing in the hotel. Reminded me a lot of that, actually. Just this last weekend, Lukash and my friend Dan and I watched The Thin Red Line. It was probably my 30th time seeing it. It was their first time. But this idea in Behind the Sun of the contested land being at the heart of the bloodshed reminded me of the line of Sean Penn's character in The Thin Red Line, where he says, the whole fucking thing's about property, right? This war, it's about taking a hill. And yeah, that we can do this to each other, that we can kill each other, that we can murder each other over property, over a plot of land. It's insane, really, when you think about it. So my question for all of you watching this then is, can we do this, right? Can we step outside this violent framework that we have created as a civilization that sees us murdering each other on the battlefield and murdering each other in the streets and murdering each other in prisons and execution chambers? Can we somehow set ourselves apart, right? See it all from a new angle and learn something new, teach ourselves something new, figure out how to divorce ourselves from the cycle of violence that we find ourselves in? Is it possible? If it's possible, what might make it possible? If it's not, why not? Shouldn't we be capable of this? Anyway, so that's Behind the Sun. That's my take on Behind the Sun. Let me know what you think of the film in the comments below. And I'll be back later this month with a kind of full wrap-up, as full as can be anyway, of 2666. I know I've been promising a March of the Mammoths video on that. I'm covering the first 3 parts. I'm almost done with the first 3 parts, and so as soon as I am, hopefully tomorrow night, I'll make that video. But at the end, there'll be a kind of wrap-up for this project. So like I said, 2666 is doing double duty for me in March. And then next month, we will be reading Me and Earl and the Dying Girl and watching the film of Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. So anyway, I hope March is plugging along for you guys with this project and all of the many other readathons and whatnot going on. And I will see you guys again very soon. Adios.